I'll go ahead and call us to order and declare that we have a quorum of 7 members present. Takes us to item C, receive a presentation related to the CSISD Texas Academic Performance Report for the 2017-18 school year. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, members of the board. We are here this evening to receive a presentation on the 2017-18 Texas Academic Performance Report, or TAPER. And this is something that is mandated in Texas Education Code that we receive once a year. You'll be seeing a lot of information related to student performance, not only state mandated testing, but college and career readiness, other measures of student performance. You'll also see demographics and staffing and demographics. I said that twice, I believe. Other information as well by program. So at the conclusion of this, we will open it for public comment for anybody who wishes to provide comment on that. And to give us our presentation this evening is Molly Perry, who is our Chief Administrative Officer. Mrs. Perry?
Thanks, Dr. Ely. Mr. Harris, members of the board, good evening. As Dr. Ely mentioned, this is our annual public hearing related to the Texas Academic Performance Report, affectionately known as TAPER. So first of all, we do have quite a bit of information in the report. Half of that report is actually based upon STAR performance, and we spent quite a bit of time earlier in the fall reviewing that, so we'll really just hit the highlights there and focus in more on some of the information about student performance in other areas, as well as staff and student demographics. So, as I mentioned, the district performance on the state mandated assessment STAR is a significant component of this report, and that's going to include, of course, all of the tested areas for grades 3 through 8, as well as end of course exams for high school courses. Information related to student completion, otherwise known as graduation rates, and dropout rates is also included. Other assessments such as ACT, SAT, even the TSI is also included. And then, as we said, we'll look at our data for both students and staff. So, really, there's sort of 4 components to this whole process. We've got our STAR, both results and participation, all of those various components that make up post-secondary readiness, and then our demographics, and then finally publicly sharing. This is one part of that. The results are also posted publicly on our website, available for anyone to see. In addition to the information that actually comes from the Texas Education Agency in the TAPER report, we're required to compile other components and publicly report. So some of that information includes our financial standard reports, which most recently would be our 16-17 actuals, our accreditation status, good news, we continue to be accredited, and then all of those campus performance objectives that are included in our campus improvement plans for the current school year. Our special ed status, we do meet requirements in that particular area. Also, we look at any sort of violent or criminal incidents that would be reported, and then finally, our student performance in post-secondary and information from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. This should look relatively familiar. It's a few highlights from our student performance on STAR that we reviewed in the fall, and big overview picture is that when we look at the all student level, our students met or exceeded passing standards at higher rates on every grade level and assessment, with one exception. And if you'll recall, we have an unusual circumstance in the area of 7th grade mathematics, where only 46% of our 7th graders actually took that assessment, because 54% of them were taking a higher level mathematics course, and so that kind of skews the population of students participating. Then our performance trends really were very similar in terms of dips and gains from year over year 17 to 18 to the state. And then our cohort performance, if you look year to year, 3rd grade, how did they do in 4th grade? How did 4th graders then do in 5th grade? We saw some consistency there, as well as some really great gains in 8th grade reading. And we identified that our performance for students who are African American across all of our various content levels and grades could really improve. And then our performance of Hispanic, limited English proficient, and economically disadvantaged students in English, science, and social studies was an area of improvement. And of course, these are all highlighted in our district improvement plan, as well as campus improvement plans. So in shifting to post-secondary readiness, here are a few highlights from the report. In 2017, we had 842 graduates. That was about 50 more than the prior year. Our 4-year graduation rate for the class of 17, which is the most recent fully submitted group in PEIMS, was 94.2, which is good. It's definitely a bit higher than that state rate of 89.7, so we are certainly glad to see that. Very few of our students drop out, and in fact, half of the percentage reported at the state level was our dropout rate, with 0.8% for 16-17. And then if you'll recall, when we talked a lot about accountability and the new system, we have this idea of college, career, or military ready graduates, meaning that a graduate either meets that standard in one of the 8 defined areas, such as ACT or SAT performance, or dual credit completion, or military enlistment. We had 64.5% almost of our graduates in the class of 2017 meet that standard, compared to the state rate of 54.2. So a little more information about how our students are prepared for post-secondary. We had a little under 30% of our students complete an advanced or dual credit course. Now that is a bit lower than the state rate, you'll notice there, but as we move into the other, you'll see that we actually have a much higher percentage of participation in AP. So while we don't have a lot in this area, our students are taking different types of courses that are preparing them for college. We did have 33% of our graduates that were considered AP grads, meaning they took an AP test and met the criterion prior to graduation. Then looking at college ready, here we're really focusing more on their performance on SAT or ACT. We had over 60% compared to the state rate of 47, so definitely an area of celebration. And then finally, our CTE coherent sequence grads. Well, what in the world does that mean? Career technology education is a very comprehensive program that encompasses many, many areas here in College Station ISD and across the state. In order to be a coherent sequence grad, though, you have to take courses in a particular sequence, and you have to have at least, I believe, 3 in that same sequence. And so we have many, many students who complete CTE courses who are not necessarily continuing on in the sequence, or maybe they're moving into a different sequence, or maybe they took a course here or there. So that rate is definitely, it's come up and down over the years, but right now for class of 17, it was significantly lower than the state rate. So an area we definitely want to highlight is our advanced placement, both participation in AP courses as well as performance on those assessments. We have more students that actually are participating in those exams. They're not just taking the courses, but they're also then participating in the test. And in terms of which tests, English is our highest, and it has been for a little while, but we're seeing the numbers increase in other areas such as math, social studies, and science, and you can see those rates there as well. And finally, our students that take AP exams do extremely well. When we look at the state rate, it's less than 50% of students meeting the criterion in all subjects, whereas we are over 78%. So certainly an area to showcase.
How do they define meeting criterion?
So the criterion is going to be at least scoring a 3.
3?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So looking at our participation and performance on ACT and SAT, our rates of participation are pretty similar to the state. We've actually seen a trend nationwide of more and more students taking ACT and SAT exams. And so that particular component is not terribly surprising. But compared to their state peers, our students do much better. We had 48.7% score at or above the criterion compared to that state percentage of 22.3. Our average SAT score was significantly higher than the state. And if you've had a student in the last couple of years, those numbers might look a little strange. They've reset the expectations there on the criterion. So you can see how we compared to the state on both SAT, and then our average ACT score was 24.3 relative to a state score of 20.3. Then looking at our staff and our student profiles, as of October 17, our enrollment snapshot number was 13,508, and our overall attendance rate for that same school year was 96.6, so a little higher than the state rate reported there. Of course, 6 weeks to 6 weeks, we ebb and flow depending on what's happening with illness and other factors. Looking just a little more about the distribution of ethnicities among our students, we continue to be primarily comprised of students who are classified as white, but that number is not a lot more than that 50% mark. And then you can see our rate of students who are Hispanic has grown somewhat over the last 5 to 10 years. African American rates have remained fairly stagnant over time in terms of percentage. Looking at vulnerable populations, these numbers are in percentages. So many of you are familiar with our rates of economically disadvantaged district-wide. That's about 1/3 of our students. Just under 9% of our students have been classified during the 16-17 school year as English language learners, almost 30% at risk. And then our special ed rates at the time of this report were 9%. However, those are much closer to 11 at this point. Then looking at our staff, how our staff is comprised, just over 50% of our overall staff members of 1,845 were teachers. And for a school district, that might sound like not a lot, but there is a lot that goes into supporting education. And we also are counting in a number of staff that we hire for things like our after-school programs. So that can really quickly sort of skew what it might look like in terms of percentages. So you can see the next highest category of staff would be our auxiliary, which is going to incorporate, of course, nutrition and transportation and facilities and grounds and all of those folks that help ensure things are running smoothly for us. And then our educational aides, which are on campuses in classrooms working with teachers and students every day. And then our other professional support, which could be specialists and diagnosticians and counselors and nurses. And then our smallest percentage is comprised, of course, of campus and central administration. Looking at the experience of our teachers, you can see that we've got a relative nice distribution. We're not heavily weighted on the beginning or extremely experienced side. The majority of our folks are in sort of that sweet spot of 11 to 20 years where they've really got some good experience, whereas we have fewer on the lower and higher side of that, and only 3.5% this school year were beginning. 28.6% of those teachers held an advanced degree, so that would be either a master's or a doctorate, which is a little higher than the state rate. Our teachers, on average, are more experienced than across the state, with 13.4 years. And then finally, our turnover rate was 14.9, which was a little under. It ticked up a little bit this year. It's hard to know exactly why. Being in a college town, we tend to have some ebb and flow. But that rate would include anybody that is leaving the classroom. So some of those folks might have been shifting to other positions. Some might just be going to other areas, so on and so forth. And there is a lot more information and detail in that TABOR report, which is available on our website now. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have or take any public comments that might be anticipated.
Any questions?
I do. On the CTE stuff, not having a kid in high school yet, I'm just curious as to just explain that a little bit more to me. What that does for the students, why, because it sounds like the state would prefer that they continue. Is that what I'm understanding?
So it's really dependent on the individual student. The coherent sequence can certainly prepare students for specific licensure tests or specific careers. Some students take a CTE class as an exploratory opportunity to really kind of see what something's about. Other students focus more on fine arts or on academics, and some students do any combination within there. The coherent sequence really does prepare students more for a specific career path, and so that certainly can be a benefit.
Okay, I do have a comment. So I think it's fine. I think that number is fine, the number that you showed up there, because so it's expected that kids are supposed to start picking a path when they're 14 years old sometimes. I mean, that's what that sounds like to me. So the fact that that number was low for us, I'm okay with. Am I making sense?
I think you are. I think your initial comment was, does the state encourage that? And I don't know that the state encourages or discourages, they report it. And so it, in a community as diverse as College Station, with rich fine arts tradition and the other things that we're able to provide here in the school district, our kids go many different directions. And some, as Mrs. Perry said, will take some different courses here and there. You might go to another district and they have some very specific pathways that are set up in their school district. And so more of their kids will go through those because they have fewer options available. So, I think we do a great job under Mrs. Ferguson's leadership in career and technical education. The amount of different things that we're able to offer our kids is really extraordinary. And I think that's just a reflection of the choice that we have available in College Station.
Thank you.
Is it a focus for the district to increase that number if it's a reported on number from the state, like with significance?
It has not been.
Okay.
It is something that we always look at as our career and technical participation and the courses the kids are in and how they're coded, and that affects us a number of different ways. But we haven't come to our campus improvement plan or district improvement plan doesn't say, we want to increase the number of kids that we have in coherent sequences. We want to make sure we're offering all the career pathways that we can for kids and giving the maximum amount of choice available.
Okay.
Any more?
Ms. Perry, you always do a good job of keeping any topic interesting, and you still get A+ for your PowerPoint slides.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Very creative. Thank you very much. Do we have any cards? Okay, well then, I guess with that, we are adjourned, and we will be back.
6:59.
We'll be back in a minute.
A minute.